guys! Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Jen and I go by The Leafy Geek here on YouTube and also on Instagram. And today I am filming part 2 of my winter themed coping mechanism video series. Basically outlining my experiences as a plant owner and grower and hobbyist in Minnesota in the dead of winter. So that's what this is all about. If you want to check out my most recent video, it is my winter vlog tour of my my setup in my home. So I feature some grow lights in that video, some humidifier information, and kind of what my process is when I am attempting to provide the best conditions for my plants. This video is going to be a little bit different. It is going to focus primarily on plants that I have purchased this winter, specifically the ones I've purchased online. And I've done a lot of that. You'd think that it would be kind of a challenge to order plants online, and you would be right, especially if you are ordering plants to be delivered to the cold northern Midwest where I am from. It is a challenge, I will say. There are several extra steps involved if you're trying to do that successfully, and some things to keep in mind. So because I've ordered quite a few this winter and have had minimal issues with my orders and that process, I thought I would share kind of what I take into account, what I consider, and also share with you some of the little planties that I have picked up. So stick around, this will be fun, and yeah, let's do the thing. If you want to like and subscribe, go ahead. All right, let's get into the thing. So a couple of questions that I consider when I'm plant shopping online is probably the most important one: who am I ordering from? So as we all know, the online plant virtual mall has exploded. There are so many places that you can purchase your plants from that, you know, even overseas. I have not personally tried overseas plant orders yet. I don't really know if that's in the cards for me, except if maybe I kind of get into some of those really hard to find Hoya that I try to stay away from right now because I know the temptation will be too much. And from what I've researched and heard, some of those overseas vendors don't necessarily ship with heat packs, generally because you have to go through customs, and the extended period of time between their shipment and the delivery to your home can sometimes stretch over weeks. And that is obviously outside the boundaries of what heat packs generally are able to, you know, to accommodate. I've seen like 60-hour and 72-hour tops for heat packs. So that's something that I definitely have tried to steer clear from, especially over winter. This summer might be a different story altogether. We will see. So who are you ordering from? That becomes a little bit easier once you've placed a few orders and you've gone through a few online vendors. Some of my most trusted ones, definitely Steve's Leaves is at the top of that list. This is kind of going to be a big shout out because I've had really positive experiences with all of these vendors. I'm not here today to caution anybody against any certain vendors, because overall my personal experience with all of the vendors I've gone through this winter has been positive. I know that's not the case for everybody, so that kind of leads me to my second point. Is the vendor reputable? What do their reviews look like? Be an avid reader of reviews. That is probably something I want to stress the most. You know, you're not the only one ordering from a particular vendor feasibly, and they're going to have reviews posted. A lot of reviewers, especially on Etsy, I've noticed, post pictures, which is also very helpful. But also, you know, just check out the reviews, see what kind of, you know, what kind of situations arise from their delivery practices. And the best way to learn is to read other people's experiences, because generally speaking, unless those reviews are several years old and they've modified or adjusted their shipping practices based on negative feedback they may have gotten in the past. You know, those current reviews are going to help give you a sense of what your experience could look like. Something else I do consider definitely in the winter is what kind of additional winter protection they have in place. Do they provide winter protection for the plants they ship? As I mentioned before, a lot of overseas vendors might not, just because the heat packs or those types of protection measures won't necessarily carry over the entire length of their shipping. So you also want to consider, how they wrap their plants. Do they provide insulating materials? Does that cost extra? That's something definitely to take into account. Some vendors will have winter protection insurance in place. And what that looks like varies. So some vendors I've gone through will include heat packs in the winter at no additional cost. Some will include heat packs at an additional cost that you pay for or you can purchase at the time of your plant purchase. So there's definitely a spectrum of what different sellers are able to accommodate and what their policies are. So definitely, weighing those kind of against how much you want the plant and how much you're willing to spend. All of these things you kind of take into consideration when thinking about ordering in the winter. You just really want to take a look at what options the individual seller is able to provide in order to ensure that the plants arrive alive. Some vendors, in my experience, and it's a recent experience, will not ship to you. I had that recently. It was the first time I've had a seller say, no, we don't feel comfortable sending this to you at this time, even with a heat pack. So it kind of goes to show that there is a spectrum, and individual sellers, especially the smaller independently owned nurseries, they have a range of opinions and policies that they create themselves and implement themselves. So in the case of this vendor, they gave me a full refund just because their policy doesn't allow them to hold my order in the greenhouse for a good weather window, which I will touch on in a second. But they didn't feel comfortable shipping to me, even with a heat pack. So they recommended I cancel my order entirely, give me a full refund, and to come back in the summer. Which is kind of a bummer because I don't necessarily know if those particular Hoya that I was ordering are going to be available come summer, but who's to say, I have to respect them for not wanting to risk the health of their plants. Especially, I will also full disclaimer, this was the first order that I was placing with this particular seller. And they didn't want me to have a negative experience on my first order, which I do understand. So kind of going back to the policy that I've run into specifically with one particular seller, and I will mention this seller by name, Steve's Leaves. This is fully posted on their website in terms of their shipping over winter. So this is a demonstrated policy that they have in place for anybody who orders through their website in the winter. They tend to hold orders in the event that they check your weather forecast in your area and see that the temperatures don't meet their minimum threshold for shipping, which I put the specifics in a different video. I'm trying to remember what the specifics are. I think it is anything over 21 degrees for a daytime temperature, they will ship with a heat pack. Anything below that, they will hold the order in their greenhouse until temperatures bump up again, which here in Minnesota, that can be week to week. That can be within 1 week, you'll have those huge temperature fluctuations. So I have an order currently pending with Steve's Leaves, and I just want to quick check that. So I have an order pending with 2 different plants, and I believe I ordered that well over a month ago, and I ordered it kind of during a warm weather spell, and it didn't get shipped, it didn't get shipped within a week, and then the temperatures plummeted right away. So they've been holding this order for me, letting it get nice and lush potentially, and growing and staying happy in their greenhouse until they can find a window with a good weather temp. And I think they do check forecasts every Sunday or Monday to kind of see if they're going to be able to get plant orders out that week to certain areas. A couple of other things to consider, specifically that I tend to look at, is what kind of shipping the seller offers. If they offer like a FedEx 2-day or a USPS priority 2-day shipping, that tends to make me feel a lot better, because you have tracking with those, and you can really pinpoint a good frame of reference for when they are going to arrive at your doorstep. And that helps you, as the buyer, plan your schedule a little bit if you have that flexibility, which I do with my day job. I'm able to work from home 2 days a week. So I can kind of, flex those days and align those with my plant deliveries, and that ensures that they're not sitting out in the cold for longer, hopefully, than, a few minutes, really, even though they are spending time on the cold mail truck. I also kind of try to be proactive and check weather forecasts when I'm ordering. I know there's not always a guarantee, especially when you're ordering off of Etsy, because a lot of those indie sellers have such a range of order to ship, time frames. So you kind of need to do your part as well, as best you can, to see kind of what your weather's looking like. If you are staring down a week-long polar vortex where your temperatures plummet below zero for numerous days, and you feel like you live in the Arctic Circle, I won't place orders if I know that's coming up. I would rather avoid it or come out on the other end of that and then kind of go from there and reevaluate. And then the last thing I always think is important to consider is your schedule, your personal schedule. Are you able to make accommodations to ensure that if not you, someone would be able potentially to pick up your plant when it arrives, just because you don't want it sitting out in the cold for, I wouldn't want it sitting out even for an hour, especially where I live, but for a whole day, the chances of your plant making it plummet. Other things to kind of consider, I know people have different feelings about no-buys or plant buying bans, but I kind of think it's important for us who live up in the northern tundra lands to consider taking breaks, especially during the months we know are going to be really, really cold, especially if we can't be proactive and manage the other considerations that I just mentioned, like your own schedule, the weather forecasting, all of that. If it's difficult for you to pinpoint and coordinate some of that, taking a little break isn't a bad option, not in my opinion. The trauma and stress of receiving a dead plant or a frozen plant, I think, far outweighs the impatience we might have when we see a plant that we really want online and want to purchase it. It's just me.